Good afternoon. Welcome to the January 26, 2021 meeting of the Town Council Charter Review Committee. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, this meeting is being videotaped and audio recorded, as well as being remotely broadcasted via a Zoom webinar. If there's anyone in our viewing audience who is taping this meeting, would you please announce yourself? Seeing and hearing none. First order of business, who would love to do minutes? Oh, we
I
have,
will.
oh,
Oh,
Andy,
geez. I thought we're
Marilyn.
gonna argue over it.
Oh, gee, Andy, it's not your turn. You can do it next time.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Marilyn.
I was all excited to do it.
Well, I don't want to break your heart. If you want to do it, I won't fight.
I usually follow you. I try and watch you. I said, all right, Maryland's this week, I'll be next week, but that's fine. Yep, I can do
Gotcha.
it.
Okay.
Okay, we have two separate minutes to approve. We have minutes that we received yesterday for January 12th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to
So moved.
accept.
A motion by Andy, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor? Bill Fonseca,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. Ralph Page,
Yes.
Jeffrey Bosworth,
Yes.
Marilyn Richards,
Yes.
Phil Adams,
Yes.
Andy Frazier.
Yes,
Okay, that's unanimous. We also have minutes of the meeting of January 19th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Second by Jeff.
Yes.
Discussion? All those in favor? Bill Fonseca,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. Ralph Page,
Yes.
Jeff Bosworth,
Yes.
Marilyn Richards,
Yes.
Phil Adams,
Yes.
Andy Frazier.
yes.
Excellent.
Larry, who made the motion for that, for those minutes?
Andy?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We have a few things on the table for today. The first one I'd like to bring, we have received a number of comments regarding two issues that were raised through a citizen. And one of them was an issue I think we had discussed before. I know the original Charter Commission discussed before, and it was a matter of term limits. And before we start that discussion, you council members, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a council rule restricting the president of the council to only be able to serve 2 consecutive terms, which means there could be a term in between not occupied by that person, and then they can run again for presidency in subsequent years. There is no rule on a council member, and there's no such restrictions in the charter itself. So just to give us some history, Bill or Ralph, could you let the committee know what position or discussions the original Charter Commission had on this issue?
My recollection was, and it still is prevalent today, is, and this can be taken in several different ways. There's usually, I mean, one of the biggest things is the learning curve on any of these boards, and it takes a long time to be brought up to speed. The other one is the availability of viable candidates that will continue to run for office, given, you know, there are annual elections and anybody can run. But I seem to recall our discussion centering around, if you're going to turn these boards over every 3 to 5 years, you're constantly going to have, you know, are you going to be able to find enough candidates to run for office?
So
part of my recollection, and if I remember right, it was Eric Madison that first brought it up, was that the voters have a right to extend our terms any length of time they want. If they
Right.
don't want us, they vote us out. We have to work for the residents, and if they don't like what they're doing, they're going to vote us out.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of where the conversation was, and the reason we didn't actually put any specific time lengths in.
Okay, so now we're in the present, and there's a concern or a suggestion we should discuss that issue again. So now open up to everyone, please type in. Yes, Andy.
I think Bill's point is very valid. You know, you put some term limits in there, and you could have problems filling vacancies on these committees. I think we've seen a history of that.
Okay. Phil?
Yeah, I think when we got the email from the resident concerned about that, I thought about it for a while, and I said, you know, is 3 terms sufficient, which would equal 9 years for an individual to be involved? And after the 9 years, if the individual wanted to get involved, there's certainly a lot of committees that the town has available. And after thinking about it for a while, I said, geez, maybe 9 years isn't bad to get new people involved in there, because what happens is, I think that once an individual runs for office and gets a following, people shy away from running because they don't want to go against that individual. And therefore, you have the same people constantly. And I think there's some merit to maybe taking a look at, say, 3 terms. I mean, to me, that would be 9 years. I don't know if anyone wants to go 9 years or not. I'm not in that position, but maybe Marilyn Ralph can tell us whether after 9 years you're pretty well burned out and you said, you know, it's time for someone else to carry the torch. Or I think we even have Mike available at the meeting as well. So that was my thoughts about it. So I wanted to, you know, talk about that.
Marilyn?
I guarantee you I'm not going to serve for 9 years. If you look at the history of the council thus far, we have 2 individuals that served only 1 term and then exited the board or the council for whatever reason. And we really don't have that currently happening on the council. Don Anderson's getting off this June after serving 5 years. It's a different kind of town service than I experienced on other boards. And I mean, it maybe I'm just further along in my age, and that's why I'm thinking this way. The examples that were given in the email suggesting term limits didn't fit anyway, because the criticism was logged against the counselors who are currently serving that served in other elected capacities, which I think enhances the council because it brings a potpourri of experience. So I wouldn't be in favor of any term limits at this point. I don't think we need it. I think Eric Madsen's words should be well heeded. Listen to the voters. If they want someone to stay, that person will stay. And if not, that person will go. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm going to give you my 2 cents. There's been talk for a long time for Congress to put term limits. One of the ideas thrust was that then congressmen and women, the senators, since they were limited by the time they could serve and wouldn't have to be worried so much about constant reelection, they could vote in the best interest of the country rather than in their own self-interest. I will tell you, I'm of the mind also to let the voters decide. If we put limits like 2 terms or 3 terms on officers, yours truly would not have been able to serve 5 terms on the Board of Selectmen. At the end of the 5th term, I was ready to leave, and that's my decision. but I was still enthusiastic up until that point about continuing, and the voters agreed, I presume. And so I wouldn't want to, if you have a pop star on the council who's doing an outstanding job and wants to continue, why wouldn't you let them continue in that role? That's my 2 cents. Any other discussion? I don't see or hear a motion. So that's the end of that discussion. The second issue that's come up through either committee members or from citizens' concerns or suggestions is the issue of the amount of time we're been spending on codification, recodification, and it being decoupled from the bylaw review process within the town council. And correct me if I'm wrong, the reason I think for bringing this up at this point is that the charter restricts bylaw review to a process of only one subject at any one time. And since there's been a process going on now for a long time of both zoning bylaws and general bylaws, and if you had more than one subject, you'd have to have multiple, if not many, public hearings on each and every individual bylaw change. And I thought that the emphasis on this idea was so you could have at one time a review and a subsequent approval of multiple subjects. Am I off base?
Nope.
Okay. And on the second issue was whether you have the allowance of multiple subjects, how do you make, based on what's required under the current charter about publicizing and making the public aware of those changes, whether or not that should be changed as well. But again, the charter only gives the availability of either one subject or multiple subjects. Once the charter, if it's amended, then it's up to the town council to do their work in the bylaw amendment process. And so I hope, because I sense some confusion of, we aren't really telling them how to, or what to amend or approve for the individual bylaws. We're merely giving them a structure so they can have multiple subjects approved at any one time. And limiting it to a date as well, which would be a change, which could, I guess, be changed at a later date, or the next charter review committee could look at it. I hope that helps. So can we go right into our continuing discussion? And we welcome Tom, and therefore Marilyn, you're, you can pipe in, but you're non-voting now.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we had been looking at the suggestion of Jesse, our town attorney, as well as Jeannie, our town clerk. They had proposed some language, and Ralph had sent, and I sent along to you a few examples of what it would look like regarding amendments to specific bylaws. And I only did that not to look at that we were looking at those particular amendments, but rather the format that a citizen could look at before the town council considered discussion on those amendments. So I've talked long enough. Someone else start the ball rolling. Yes, Ralph.
So Larry, I'll jump in. What I sent to you, the first 2 pages would be a synopsis of all major amendments. Anything that we thought was major, which listed different fines that were happening, any language that we thought was important that actually changed the meaning of something. I didn't include in there any of the minor changes, which would be, instead of it saying, let's say selectmen, it now says town manager. Those were global changes. I took that information off of what we, the bylaw committee had submitted to the town council a year ago to get a general feeling of what their thoughts were. Then I took it a step further and I included all of the existing bylaws and zoning bylaws. I highlighted all the areas. I listed on the original pages in red where you could find those changes within the bylaws, what chapter. And then I gave a comment next to the bylaw, which was an explanation of why we were looking to change it. What my thought was is anyone going to the town's website, if they could scroll through that, they could easily see what all the major changes were that we were proposing. They could easily find the location of them and then get a write-up of why we were looking to do it. Because when it comes in front of the council, all those major changes will be brought up individually. A vote will be taken individually if we want to do it, and then as a whole to do the whole bylaw change. So the public will have a chance to look at everything and see everything. And with the language that Jesse gave us, he's extending the time frame and all for the public to look at everything. So I thought I hit all points that we had talked about in all avenues. But if there's any other changes or suggestions or amendments or changes that I could put in place, I'd be happy to.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the first 2 or 3 pages of that lengthy document were similar to what we spoke about last meeting, that a separate piece of paper would tell you what changes are being made, and then you'd have to go to the main document and look there. What you've done now is incorporate in the body, you still have the synopsis pages, but you also now have in the body highlights and comments what's being changed. One of them I sent you was changing the amount of a fine. And I think that's exactly what we were talking about last time. I know Phil was concerned as I was, and this is an easy way where someone doesn't have to keep going back and forth. They can look at it. Yes, it's very lengthy, but even if you go at a faster speed than just clicking one page at a time, you can see the highlighted version. And the only thing I have is now in the proposed language, it had the codification process shall include, I'm going to skip things, and retitling existing sections, making grammatical changes, and other minor substantive changes. And then in the change of that was a definitional section. The application section, which is Article 2, Section 6, said that the proposed codification will not require the use of strikeout types, brackets, or underscoring. So there's a conflict there of what you'd be showing, as you have shown, with the wording in the charter portion. Yes, Ralph.
So Larry, I don't think there really is. The codification is all those little minor changes.
Yep.
Amendments are the major ones, which are then highlighted and commented on all on. The little grammatical and all of that, I'm not expecting to go back through the whole zoning and regular to highlight each one of those, because if I did that, we would pretty much just highlight the entire thing.
Right. So the wording that concerns me is and other minor substantive changes to existing language. Your definition of minor or substantive is different possibly than mine or John Q. Public. And leaving that in leaves, I guess, leaves up to individuals on the council as members to make the decision, but we don't think that's a major substantive change. And so why would you not just say that, delete that, so that any substantive changes have to be highlighted? Yes, Phil.
I just wanted to look at the Article 2, Section 6, where it says clearly identified changes being proposed, number 5. If you look down at number 5, it says even if you don't require the strikeout type brackets or underscoring, I think it's advisable to make sure residents can see the entire proposal in a hard copy and or online. So I think that that's important, which takes care of not required to use. I think you have to use the strikeouts, according to what this number 5 reads, if I interpret it correctly.
You're looking at Section 5 of Article 2.
No, Article 2, Section 6.
Section 6.
Yeah, it says clearly identified the changes being proposed. The last one it's highlighted, and then next to it's 5. And if you go down, read 5, it says even if,
Are you reading the current charter language?
No.
no, I'm reading the proposal one by Jesse and
Okay.
Jeannie.
Yeah.
So I guess it's saying that you should use the strikeout brackets and underscoring, if I interpret it the right way. Or it goes back to what we were discussing, saying that one copy should have both the old and the new together, so that you could see the old, say you see the old fine and then you see the new fine.
Well, there's different wording here. There's, in Article 2, Section 6, that proposed wording talks about for amendments. And there's no, unless I'm missing it, I don't know what the difference between amendments and minor substantive changes would be.
I don't either.
Couldn't one be the same as the other? In fact, isn't a minor substantive change an amendment?
So technically, Larry, any change we make to the bylaws is an amendment to the bylaws.
Correct, you're correct. But
So-
you exempt out just grammatical and, or typographical, that type. And I guess I'm looking for consensus. Is there a difference in your mind, all of you, between amendments and merely grammatical or typos that have to be corrected?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeff?
I said yes.
Okay. So I have a suggestion. If we're all in consensus that you should differentiate between those minor grammatical typos. What else do they talk about? And retitling existing. Can we reword this to have it so for those, you don't need the strikeouts and the highlights? But any other amendments, you would need to do what you've done in this document you've sent. You'd have to highlight, underline, or however you want to make it evident in the proposed document what the change is.
So you'd have the old with the change being highlighted.
Yeah, just like Ralph, the ones I sent you, you can see that he has in bold the change. I'm looking at one of the pages on Health Department, and it's highlighted in the main body, and then on the side he has a comment that the language was amended to update the current organization and duties of the Health Department. That way someone can look at this online, you know, when the town council decides, and they can quickly and clearly see what the change is. What are your thoughts about changing language in the proposal that way?
Sounds good to me.
That'll work.
And it
But-
certainly is clear to the public and eliminates a lot of questions afterwards as to, you know, why was this done? Why wasn't that done?
I'm also, I'm suggesting all this to protect the public. We don't know what'll happen in the next 5 years or so. And this is really transparency. So everyone knows what's going on, and something can't be legislated without the public's knowledge. So I have another suggestion. Can Ms. Jeannie and Jesse, now knowing what we'd like to see, come up and change the language to satisfy that in both the definition and the operative section? Are you okay with that, Jeannie?
Sure, if that's what you want me to do. I think what Ralph's proposed, though, and the strikeouts are two different directions for the same end. So that's going to affect the language 100% in what was proposed. Because is it strikeouts or not? I mean, I thought Ralph's was, I couldn't know how more inclusive you could get in what Ralph proposed, but it's not the strikeouts.
Right.
So,
I mean, part of the issue, Larry, is we're creating, not creating departments, we're creating a description for departments that were never even in the old bylaw. So there's
Right.
no way to use a strikeout process. It would be just the addition of some language.
it was an omission. And we're
And,
trying
and
to-
that's what we did on a lot of these, on a lot of departments, some of the description of, we now have a director. And we tried to unify and make all the departments the same so that you could just read through and see, okay, there's a director, they have to do an annual report, they have to do this and this. Old bylaws didn't contain all of that. So a lot of these amendments that we're doing is additional language just being installed for clarification purposes.
It's still a substantive change.
Oh, I agree, and that's why I highlighted it.
Yep.
A substantial change.
That
There's
doesn't,
you
does
strike out
substantive
something
change
to strike out.
doesn't mean you have wording already in there and you're changing it. It could be a substantive change is changing and introducing new articles, bodies, etc. Correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Why I thought I mean, I'm reading Jesse's language. What he's saying is the codification process, which is all the minor changes, will not require the use of strikeout, brackets, or underscoring as set forth for amendments made in the usual course, but shall be prepared in such a way to clearly identify the changes proposed. So I took that as saying any of the major amendments and stuff, we have to clearly identify those. But all the little minute stuff, we don't have to. I mean,
Right, but I don't know that that says it exactly. And let's say 3 years down the road, oh, it can't, it has to be by that date.
it's got to be by
Right.
December 31st.
Um,
So just to get another codification even started by then, you'll be outdated, and then we'd have to come back and change the charter in order to do all of this. That's why the date in the charter is the proposed date. I
Yeah.
think extremely important.
I agree. But tell me if I'm being too anal. When you say as to clearly identify, is that sufficient to have what you've done? Or do you, are you more specific and that way there's no disagreement by saying for either notwithstanding the above, any other, after you said about grammar and typos, etc., and retitling, notwithstanding the above, any other substantive changes or amendments shall require highlighting, etc. Because clearly identify, what does that mean? Is it that separate document again? Yeah, yes, Phil.
Larry, I think you're correct. We ought to give Jeannie and Jesse an opportunity to put our thoughts together so we can see a revised definition and Article 2, Section 6, so that we can go back to it and have a document that we're actually looking at instead of trying to piecemeal this. I think we all understand what everybody's saying here.
Yes, Marilyn.
As I'm looking at the definition, there's only really one word that I'm struggling with, because reorganization, renumbering, retitling of existing sections, grammatical changes, I mean, that's all part of the format change. The only word I'm struggling with is substantive.
Yep.
If the definition didn't include the word substantive, because the codification, as was spoken earlier, codification are these changes, the new format. The amendments are what we're talking about in the second section. And what Ralph did, I thought was perfect. I went through the document. I went through the whole document and picked out almost as, without, even looking at his lead sheet that says where the changes were, and could zero in on what was changed in the subjects, of the amendments. And so I thought that satisfied the need for the council who would be making, and the citizens who would be addressing, supporting this going forward.
Right, what Ralph did is great.
Right.
We just want the wording in these two proposals to reflect what he's done.
So if you took out substantive in the definition and referenced minor changes to existing language,
Yeah,
and then in the second, and under Article 2, Section 6, we don't require the strikeouts, but they are clearly identified with color highlighting where the changes are. I think that's sufficient.
so if you took out the word minor in the definition and other substantive changes
Oh, she's saying take out substantive and just leave minor.
and other minor changes,
Yeah.
Right.
Existing language.
Bill, you're pushing the envelope. Who
Yeah,
determines
what's minor?
minor and what's major?
Yeah.
But it's subjective. No matter what language we use, it's going to be subjective.
Possibly, Go ahead, Jeannie, you've had your hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm scrolling through Ralph's entire document, and for instance, besides having in his, side margin, the comments, adding language that should be there. For instance, if a fine changed, he's highlighted, shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $100. Then his comment says, this fine is being increased from 50 to 100. So it's serving the same purpose as a strikeout. It's just not a strikeout. In this proposed language that Jesse and I put forth, the proposed codification will not require the use of strikeout, type, etc., but shall be prepared in such a way as to clearly identify the changes being proposed. That would be Ralph's document with
Right.
all of the comments on the side. And it's serving the same purpose. I think the strikeout, though, if you use that word, it's almost impossible to do it that traditional way that you would traditionally, edit a document, show edits.
Especially this type of document.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
Ralph.
So Larry, did everyone, you only sent, I sent my entire document to, I believe you and Jeannie, and I think Marilyn.
Mhm.
Everyone else only got a couple pages of the actual bylaws highlighted. It may help them to see what I did if I forward the whole document to them. And that way there, they can see the synopsis, see the chapter that I listed for it, then see the document with all the changes and all in it.
I still think that there has to be some easy way of putting in here language what has been done. So it happens on any proposed bylaw change or codification. And I don't know, I don't know the language that should be in there. I think we're all agreeing on the concept. If we aren't, tell me.
Yeah, I think we're arguing about the wording.
Yes,
Yeah, we are.
that's
Yeah.
all. So Jeannie, what do you think? Is it too much of a burden to ask you?
no, not at all. I mean, I think we're getting there. It's just, we seem to be going round and round. So we
Yeah.
all agree that we'd like to have this added so we can approve this as one approval, right? And not several public hearings. That's our goal. We all agree that we want to do that.
Mhm.
So our only, and I think we all need to agree, do we use Ralph's document or not? And maybe after the rest of the committee can review Ralph's document, we can decide that. But, and I think also I agree with minor substantive changes. We have to be as less objective as we can on that.
Yep.
So
All right, Ralph, do you want me or you want to send everyone the full document?
I'll go ahead and forward it to everyone.
Okay. All right.
So Larry, one other point, I just wanted to make sure that the general public knows that this language is being proposed as an addition to Article 2, Section 6.
Mhm.
And once we hit that date, that basically this information becomes useless because you can't codify anything after that. And after that point, each bylaw change will revert back and have to be done with strikeout and all. I know there was some issue where someone thought that we were removing Article 2 and just replacing it with this.
Yep.
So I just wanted to clarify that's not
Yep.
what we're looking at doing.
But one caveat, if after that date of whatever we decide, December 31st, 2021, there still could be some process to amend the charter again.
Right.
And wouldn't necessarily have to wait for that 10-year committee again.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. All right, have we squeezed this enough?
For now, yeah.
Yeah. Amen.
All right, we have time. We also received from Kathy Hill if I can find it, suggestions to us. And the first one is on Article 7, Sections 3B and 3C. So let's take a look. Everyone had a chance to look at her suggested wording?
Yeah.
When did that come?
Say it again?
When did that come? Kathy's,
How do I go to my laptop and look up the date. I want to say last Thursday or Friday.
okay,
Yeah, the 21st.
thank you.
But Larry, did it come to you and then you forwarded it to us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Jeannie, you'd be looking for Larry.
I'm sorry.
On the 21st?
The subject is proposed rewording.
I don't think I have that.
Hold on.
Nope, you weren't on.
What?
Well,
No, you're not.
Can someone send me, please?
Anyone find it quickly?
I got it.
got it, Bill?
Can you
I
say?
got it. I'll send it right over, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Okay. So in her subsection B suggestion,
Okay, just sent it.
Thank you.
and this would be on a preliminary election determination of candidates. I know she was trying to make it, I forget her language, more concise. But I have a concern that something's lacking in here that's in the current charter. In the current charter, midway through, it says if 2 or more persons are to be elected to the same office in such regular election, the several persons in number equal to twice the number so to be elected, receiving at such preliminary election the highest number of votes for nomination for that office shall be the sole candidates for that office. It continues.
She just missed
Yeah, you missed a piece.
a number
Yeah.
equal to twice the number.
Mhm.
Right.
She missed that.
Right.
Yeah, if you put that in, I think it's the same.
Yes. So
Yeah, I had that as well.
I didn't have any other thoughts on subsection B other than that was not included. Anyone else?
That was the only thing I picked up, Larry, was what you and Phil already addressed.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
So, how about her other language changes suggestion to that section?
I didn't see a problem with it.
All right, so if I'm looking where to insert that language.
Oh, she has it under C.
Is that a replacement?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. No, I don't think, I think you need the language
You do.
in B, don't even look at C, because C
C is different.
doesn't address, yes. So if everyone is inclined to vote on her suggestion, we have to read together and insert those words. If two or more persons are to be elected to an office, and she deleted the word, rather than "and," she deleted the same office.
Oh.
And
No, that's a good point, Larry. I didn't pick that up.
um,
Yeah.
I would ask that we defer this till we all go over her suggested change on that subsection with a fine-tooth comb. And her proposal on C, conditions making, my initial response was, I was comfortable with the existing language. So I'm going to ask, based on all that, we re-review that. And also on her Article 8, Section 4A, she has made a change that she has the third line from the bottom, or at a special election that the council can call at its convenience. That leaves it wide open.
That's still in there. It's in the original.
It's in the original,
Yeah.
so I don't know why I brought that up.
She's adding clerk of the town council, which is correct. Addressing the 500 voters, which
So-
isn't here.
I think I brought it up because I didn't realize the significance of that, even the original charter. So this could be stalled in theory until the next general election. If you're leaving it up to the town council at its discretion, whether to call a special election. Well, rather than waste time, can we all look at these again for our next meeting?
Mhm.
Hey, Larry, I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Actually, Jeannie can probably answer this. Let's say, going forwards in the next month, one of the members of the council steps down. They are not one of the ones up for election. But yet at election time, their position will be filled. So you'll end up having 3 candidates. Do you have to take and stipulate at the town election which position you're going to run for? You know, the one that's got 2 years left? Or is it open? How do you decide that?
I don't know.
I thought that it had to be designated.
I thought you had to identify what office you're running for.
Yeah,
Well, you're running for town council.
For which,
but they're separate because you're
They're
filling a
separate
term.
seats.
Right.
One is filling a term, the other one is filling, just a general election. So there's a difference.
Why, are you resigning?
Well, no, just saying on the ballot, usually it just says,
3-year
you
term.
know, it lists the people that are running for town council. There's
I
I
three.
think the ballot would look different too.
Hmm.
Wouldn't you have to stipulate the remainder of this term for the one who's resigning early,
Mhm.
as opposed to,
Wouldn't you fill that position
3-year
before the
term.
election, though? I mean, that would be,
Not necessarily,
No.
because of the
done
way
that
it's,
before, but it wasn't on the ballot.
well, what I'm
Well, if
saying
you
is if someone resigns and there's, what, 6 weeks left or
Oh.
10 weeks or something, then it goes to, you don't fill the position, it goes to the ballot.
Right.
Be filled.
There's a time kicker in the charter.
Yeah.
120
And I
days.
just didn't see anywhere in the charter where it says that you're designating which town council seat you'd be running for, or if it even needs to be in there.
Where is that, Tom? The 120 days, where'd you see that?
Oh,
It's Article 2, Section 8.
A vacancy.
I just wasn't sure if that's something that should be addressed. I mean, we're talking about adjusting language slightly and all, and I don't even know how to word it. You know, it's just, we've got all these wonderful minds together at once. I thought I'd throw something at them.
Oh my God.
It's
I thought it was
120 days.
someplace else. Maybe that's, maybe that's when a town councilor is removed.
I thought when you filled out the nomination papers, you had to describe what office you were running for.
It switched either council or school committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can also say town council replacing or just a 3-year term. So you'd say, I'm running for a 2-year term and somebody else is running for a 3-year term.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go into detail who left or anything. You just say it's either a 2-year term or a 1-year term and somebody else is running for a 3-year term.
It definitely has to be separated out.
Yeah. I think it's already been in there. I don't think we have to do anything other than what we currently have.
Well, it's just how it appears on the ballot.
Yeah, well, that Jeannie does that. She
Right.
decides and she hands out the nomination papers of who's running for what office.
Right.
So when they come in, you say you're running for the 1-year term or the 3-year term.
Yeah, because you got to
Tell
sign
her.
the big book. You got to sign the book and designate.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think there's a process in place.
I agree.
It's not in the charter, though. It's
No,
probably.
it's not in the charter. It's in your office.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's even in Mass General Law somewhere, because this is something that we've done historically over time. I remember Planning Board had 2 candidates up for election. One was for the 5-year term, which is the normal term for Planning Board, and the other one was for a 3-year term, which was fulfilling the unexpired term of someone who had resigned. So we've done it before. School committee, I believe we've done it as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't know if it's, where it ended up in our regulations, whether it's driven by a statute or whether it's just makes sense. Which if you've got 2 positions open, you know, and one is an unexpired term, there's an opening for a 2-year term or a 3-year, you know, on the council, say a 2-year term on the council.
So it doesn't need to be in the charter? Is that what you all think? I just don't have the experience to answer that accurately. I'm sorry.
I maybe we should check further and see if there's any statute that addresses this,
Okay.
because it's a viable point
Right.
to bring up, and if nothing else, it's going to describe the process. And for lack of better terms, codify it.
Thanks, Ralph.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking if you're looking at the top vote getters and, you know, the top 2 per position get it, well, if you're running for council, you're running for council, whether it's, you know, maybe the one with the least number of votes gets the 2-year term that's available and the one with the most votes gets the 3.
I don't think you can do that, Ralph.
No.
No,
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
you
so.
can do that.
The
I
vote-
I think
you're
it has to be
making this-
designated.
Yeah, I think you're making this a little bit more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
isn't that the way we did it in the first
In the
election?
first election, yes.
But that was just one shot
Yeah.
because we didn't have any counselors, so nobody resigned.
So, yeah, so you were talking about
But
what
that's-
seats based on the votes.
But then you
Right.
were, you were considering a 1-year seat, a 2-year seat, and a 3-year seat.
But
Correct.
that was one
By
shot
the number
only.
of Votes that you got.
Yeah.
But we wrote that
That's
into the
all.
charter for one time.
I mean, it probably doesn't need to be in there. I believe through the clerk, it would be taken care of, but it was just reading the language and then reading the charter that popped into my mind. And I'm like, well, how do we handle this? And I don't want someone to come back later and say, well, that wasn't fair. I got more votes than this one. I should have gotten this term instead of that. And
Right, and the staggered terms was in the transition Article 10. But I'm looking more at this,
That's,
this language about a vacancy. And one could argue that even the language now, I don't want to suggest, but that it should be clarified that they probably would have to designate the remaining year or years in, and that would be the slot.
right.
And because it's not clear here, that is for the remaining term of the council member who vacated.
I think you're going to see state statute that identifies that if Jeannie looks it up on how to describe the position that you're running for. I think that's going to be state law.
Now, question, I know that when Joe Ford resigned, he resigned in the third year of his term. Did Eric also resign in the third year of his term?
I don't remember.
Counselor people, Eric
believe he
Manson,
did.
I mean, Tom O'Connor filled his slot, right?
Yes, for the remainder of the 3rd year. And then
Okay, and then he was on the following ballot for a
Right.
3-year term.
So we've never.
Yeah, but it was that was an expiring term anyway.
Correct. Correct. So we haven't had anyone leave the council in the middle of, actually in the 2nd year.
Right.
Jeannie, is it difficult for you to find that answer?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Dr. Bosworth has just reminded me we're at the end of our lovely interlude. And so with that, so we have the next meeting to pick up codification, even though, yes, we are squeezing the hell out of it. And we'll look at this issue that Ralph has brought up. And after that, put a gag in Ralph's mouth. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Motion.
By Jeff. Phil
Second.
was second. All those in favor, Bill Fonseca,
Yes.
Larry Levine, yes. Jeff Bosworth,
Yes.
Phil Adams,
Yes.
Andy Frazier,
Yes.
Tom Christensen,
Yes.
and Ralph Page.
yes.
Have a great night and stay well, people.
Okay.
See everybody later.
See you.
Thank you.